So our guest is finally through the traffic this morning. Pat George, our producer, was talking all about how lovely the traffic is out there this morning.
Yes.
Good morning and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
So I opened up the show a little bit when I first came on and I was explaining the dispersonality profiles. So I figured that would be a good segue into what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that I went to your website and kind of poked around, and I was really awe-inspired by some of the stuff that I found. And so we're going to run out of time. I know we are. So let's just talk a little bit about who you are, your background, and then we're going to touch very briefly on what you do here. And I would love to invite you back for another show because I know we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
Because I'm very familiar with what you do, and I think it's so spot on. Like everything we do, interviews around this stuff.
Okay, very good. I'm Scott Davies. I'm the CEO of PointLeader Predictive Analytics Incorporated. And what we do is help businesses fit people to jobs, both for the good of the people and for the good of the company, of the business. Yes, so we do that in a fair and unbiased way. So it's really important to me.
It's interesting. So you know what I printed for you, and I wish we had a little more time to connect today before the show. But this is the one that Keller Williams uses. And I was telling Pat George, I'm going to send you a KPA to see how it comes out. And so when I took this, I didn't even realize that KW had one of these for agents.
Yes.
And so my team leader at the time sent me one for what they call a mega agent, which is somebody that, sells a lot of real estate, specific job type, that sort of stuff. So it spits back, a low, medium, high, and then it shows all these other things on where you fit in basically within the profile. Now, I will tell you, I ran through this really quick because it was about 7 o'clock at night. I was still here at the office. I was annoyed. I didn't know why I was taking it.
Yes.
I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I'm doing. So anyway, I didn't realize that this was what it was. So I ran through it, and I probably should retake it because I would score a little differently on some of these things because I literally blew through it at the end.
Right.
But the cool part about this, and I'm sure your stuff does the same thing, is it spits out this job match report, review, operating style that talks all about how we interact as a team and a descriptive review. And then it also prints out a job match report. And so this part's pretty cool because I took the one for Mega Agent, and you can see it's also a high match even though I blew through it. Because there's a lot of things it really sees.
Yes.
And there's some stuff that was even higher. And so the cool part about this, I usually look at it like, I look to see what's high, and then I go straight to the bottom, and I look from here up. And so looking at my KPA, what do you know about me? You just met me. You've known me for all of, 5 minutes of being in the studio? What would you say if you had to describe me? Because you're in this space.
Well, first of all, you told me that you blew through it, which means that you're motivated. You want to get things done.
Well, what's that called on a dispersonality profile?
Well, I don't use the DISC myself, and they set things up a bit differently than I did, but I say it's got something to do with motivation and drive, results orientation, right?
He's describing the D personality profile that I was mentioning earlier.
And blowing through it, actually going through a personality assessment quickly is often the best results you're going to get because you're giving us your first impression. And that's usually the best impression. You're not overthinking it, saying, well, what is it that they want me to say?
So I don't know how yours are, but I remember taking this one, and towards the end, there were these little cubes, and you had to rotate them in your mind and move them, and I was like, this is so annoying. Like, I don't want to do this at 8 o'clock at night.
You're right. We have some like that, except they're more job-related. Little verbal intelligence questions and math questions and some spatial questions like that. And we actually put them through the personality items so that it makes the test a bit more interesting.
Yeah.
So you answer a few personality questions, and then you answer some ability questions.
So what I realized from taking this, and the interesting thing before you walked in, this was my career for the first 17 years of my life. This is what I did. And it's interesting because I would never do that job again.
Well, there you go. That's exactly right. So even though you could do it, that's the thing to remember. This is more about potential.
Yep.
So these things that you're low on, it doesn't mean that you can't do them. It just means they won't be very good fit. And if you do them very long, you'll probably get burned out.
Mr. Scott, I call it a happiness factor.
Happiness factor,
right?
That's right.
Like if you were to throw me into being a listing assistant or a legal assistant or an accountant, which are all on the bottom of my list, I would want to probably stab myself in the eye with a pencil and leave.
That's right. There's no room for motivation there. It's more or less, and it's very detail-oriented, very rules-oriented, and you're much more a big-picture thinker. You're much more people-oriented, too. I mean, coaching, teamwork, team leader, these are your high points. And those are very much people skills, not these process-oriented things.
Well, here's the interesting point.
Less.
So KW Maps Coach is a high match at the top of the list for me. The next thing is a single agent. And so what that is, like an agent that just has maybe an assistant and that's it. They don't run a big team, which is what a mega agent does in the real estate space. And so it's so interesting that it's on this order because I've been that smaller agent, and there's days that I'm like, this was so much simpler and easier when I was by myself with an assistant. Like my relationships were better with the people, and it was just I knew everything that was going on, and so it's just interesting because your thoughts even kind of show up in these KPA results.
They do, and that's the sales results coming out because you want to be you want to get individual results. You're results oriented at the individual level, but it doesn't mean that you can't coach a team. It's just that you appreciate and enjoy both, right?
Yeah, definitely. But when we interview anybody for our team, we go through this, and so the interview part it's about 60 pages, and so this is just one little piece, and then the front piece there's more pages. That's what we give our interviewers so they can see, but we literally go through and we read it to them to see, does this sound like you? Right?
That's right. And not only do you want to know if the person's high fit or low fit, you want to know what you're getting in this person, right? So as a manager or team lead, you look at it and decide, is this someone that I can deal with? What kind of a fit will it be on my team? Because everyone on the team doesn't need to look identical.
Right.
It's like a basketball team. You only need one 7-foot guy probably, but you need some guys that are really fast and can dribble and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's the same with this. So you need to be able to look at it and say, as a manager, as a team leader, is this someone who I can develop? Will they fit on my team? And that's what this kind of information gives you, besides fit.
Yeah.
Right?
So the other thing we do, too, when we go through and we read this, and I printed my own so I can make an example of myself, right? So some of the things we do is we go through here and we read it to them and with them. And so we ask them, how does that sound? When we talk about communication, does this sound like you? Is there any words that doesn't fit?
Right.
How would you rate this on a scale of 1 to 10? What would you change?
Right. And I might suggest that's good. That's good that you're doing that. And the other thing that you can do to perhaps get a bit more honest information from them, because some people are really good at interviewing, right?
Right.
And that's fine and dandy, except they may lie a bit. So what you want to do is ask them to give you a good example. Tell me an example of a time that you were in a workspace and communications was not going very well. Or tell me a time when communications are doing really, really well. And then the example that they give you is quite telling about what this person thinks of as good communications versus bad communications. I had a guy one time tell me that he had thrown his managers under a bus in order to get one to quit because he had to take 2 people and make it into one job. And it's just a horrible example, right? But that was his best example of being a manager, and he thought it was good.
It's the first thing they think about, and you get to know how they think.
That's exactly right.
Your organization.
That's right. And then as an interviewer, you have to make sure you don't clap your hand over your mouth and say, "Oh no, that's terrible," right?
Right.
You want them to keep going.
Neutral,
Keep going. Keep telling me more, and then
I tell you, we have interviewed so many people that literally. One of the folks that I interviewed in the past, some of the things that come out in these interviews, the guy was literally a gun runner pre 9/11.
Oh my.
Yeah, a lot of stuff comes out in these interviews.
Oh, it's amazing what they will say.
Yeah.
That's right. We even use Zoom interviews, which is interesting today with the coronavirus going on. We use online Zoom interviews, and we'll have someone interviewing. There'll be 3 of us on a panel looking back at them through the computer screen,
Yeah.
And it's amazing what they will say. It just still blows me away after 25 years being an IO psychologist to see them reveal and state things to us, peering at them through this screen, and it's as if they cannot stop themselves.
Yeah.
Right. They really want to share.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your background in a minute, and we're so off the cuff in terms of the interview and how we would normally do it. But I love this kind of stuff, and I believe in it, and I think it's a lot more effective than even just taking a disc, because it doesn't, like you said, you don't use the disc. That gives you an idea for how someone's style is, and really they could modify the disc based on how they answer, right? If you know how it works, you can manipulate it. But I think on these other ones, you can't really manipulate them.
You can't manipulate them very well, and the things that we've done for that are like item timing. That each personality question, you've got 10 seconds to answer it so that you get that best honest response from the person. And people answer them in an average of 4 seconds apiece anyway, so we're not speeding them along too much. But they will give a much more honest response, and then weaving in cognitive ability items throughout the personality items makes them use the other side of their brain, right? So you're asking me if I'm nice, if I follow rules, if I want to lead people, and now all of a sudden you're making me find the long side of a triangle, right? Now, I don't care as much about whether you know about the long side of a triangle. I'm trying to break up that socially desirable response set that you're in if you're any good at taking a test, right? By asking you something that's off the wall and about ability. And we use that for some jobs. I mean, if it's the job that requires geometry, then of course we use that score. But otherwise, it keeps a person more honest.
So your background, and that's why I say I would love to have you back, because I knew we were going to run out of time. And we'll talk a little bit about your background and connect. But I think it would be so fun if I take one of your personality profile assessments, and then when you come back, we can have fun with it on the air.
That would be great.
And you'll know a lot about me. And so what I found is, since we've started interviewing in this way, as opposed to any other way in the past, we get a much better fit for our organization.
Good.
The expectations are a lot clearer of what that job role is, and we're not asking somebody to do something they wouldn't be happy doing. Right. And so there's times we could be interviewing for a certain position, but then they score way higher for something else.
Right, and this is what got me into this field. So I grew up a farmer, raising cattle and growing corn up in northeast Kansas, little town of Robinson, Kansas. Went to school in Hiawatha, Kansas. And the agribusiness all took a big hit in the late 70s, early 80s. And I got out of it and went to work for Rockwell International in a steel foundry. And I was shocked at how many men in there did not fit their jobs well at all. And Rockwell spent a lot of money maintaining their machines. I said they spend more money buying oil for their machines than they do oil for their people. And it was the people that made the place. I mean, whether we made money or not, whether we made production numbers or not,
if they don't show up, nothing happens.
That's right. Or if they sit there on their machine and cry all night because they don't fit the job, they shouldn't be there. They should be off doing something else where they're not all alone. Well, they're not getting anything done either. And Rockwell put me through school, actually, and then I went to Ohio State and got my PhD and master's degree in IO Psych.
Curious question about that. Are you seeing a trend in the younger generation compared to people like our age or older where they would do that, right? I don't know what year that was, but I'm assuming, latter.
I went to school in the 90s, the early 90s, yes.
So, I mean, when you worked for Rockwell, that was what, 80s?
Yes.
Okay. So in the 80s, before a lot of this stuff, on kind of pre-internet, I noticed that the younger generation, like the millennials, they're all about the happiness factor, the job fit. Like, they look for that.
Yes,
and
they have different expectations.
They will take less to make sure they're in a job that they love.
Yes.
Compared double and no thanks, I don't want this job.
Well, at least they do so far. So, I'd done a lot of generational research, and what I found is that it's more related to age than it is generation. So when the millennials get to our age, they may think very differently about that than they do today.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of them, so if they don't have any kids yet, you remember when you didn't have any kids, you weren't married, you could do pretty much whatever you wanted. Yeah. Well, then maybe you might decide, I want the job that fits me better than the one that makes more money. But once you're married, you've got kids, you've got a house payment, well, then all of a sudden it veers us more towards, but I got to make a living. Right. So I think that's yet to be seen. If the millennials stay on this path of more self-gratification, and it's not wrong. I wish a lot of times I would have thought more like they did early in my career and I've been a bit more selfish about what I did rather than just driven, you have to work.
We're probably too early, right, on that spectrum to peg them down, like you said.
That's right. And we'll see what they're like by the time they're middle-aged, right?
So we are here today with Scott Davies. He is the CEO of PointLeader. And so PointLeader can actually help you get together information to do assessments so that you make sure you're hiring quality candidates for the position you're looking for.
That's right.
Did I sum that up?
That's right.
In lay terms? All right. So we'll be back with another edition of this show in the future, and we're going to talk a little bit about Scott's background, and we're going to also tell you how this particular type of research and organizational model can help fit the right person for your place. We're at 813-377-2775. Call or text to get more information. We'll hook you up with Scott.